Hello, I'm Bob Seltzer. I was once a Greek here at Mizzou many years ago. It was a wonderful experience for me, and I made many good friends and career contacts as a result. I'm also a member of the Mizzou Greek Alliance, a group of dozens of alumni from many houses on campus. But today, I'm speaking as a parent more than as an alum. We all understand the value of Greek membership. It can be life-changing in a positive way. But we know there are risks facing your age group that we wish we had known more about when we were your age. One of these risks is hazing, and that's the topic of this training session. I think most of you know what the term hazing refers to. The dictionary defines it as, quote, humiliating and sometimes dangerous initiation rituals, especially as imposed on college students seeking membership in a student organization. A lot of houses, as well as other organizations, engage in harmless hazing that does not go much beyond asking the, quote, new guy or gal to endure a minor task or mild teasing. But that's not the topic of this video. Soon I will list some activities that constitute inappropriate hazing rituals. When you hear them, you will probably think that you would never allow yourself to be part of something so dangerous or stupid. But I'm here to tell you that many of you would get caught up in this under the right circumstances. My job today is to show you how it happens and to teach you how to see it coming. The picture in front of you was taken in about 1943 by my late father. He was a young Marine officer on a ship crossing the equator. At the time, the Navy had a tradition called a shellback ceremony. Those who were crossing the equator for the first time had to run a gauntlet. It involved jumping into a vat of water and then running through a line of men who would hit you with rubber hoses. My dad apparently was smart enough to tape magazines to his body so that the blows wouldn't hurt him as much. In the end, the initiates were told they had to swallow a shot of insecticide. I don't know if it was really insecticide, but that's what they were told. My dad went through it and said it was pretty rough. He told me that several months after he went through it, things got out of control and the crew beat a man to death. They probably didn't mean to kill the man, but he didn't survive the beating. How could members of the U.S. Navy get involved in a ritual that ended up killing one of their own? They claimed it was a tradition. The fact is, hazing rituals sometimes result in tragic consequences that the participants did not intend. An author named Hank Newer wrote a book called Wrongs of Passage, as opposed to Rites of Passage. He says, quote, hazing is an extraordinary activity that when it occurs often enough becomes perversely ordinary as those who engage in it grow desensitized to its inhumanity. In a Greek house, hazing can start small, but escalate to a level that can be harmful, even fatal. Again, most of the 6,000 Greek chapters in America won't do this to you, but a small minority will. You may have seen this before. The story goes that if you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, he will jump out. But if you place him in lukewarm water and slowly turn up the temperature, he'll stay in it, getting used to the heat until it kills him. It's important to remember that the victims of hazing are not always who you think they are. Certainly the people who are hazed are victims, but others can also be victims. The house members who are expelled, sued, and sometimes prosecuted for participating are also harmed by this phenomenon. Any of those outcomes can change your life considerably. Also among the victims are the family of hazing targets. Here's a case study from Mizzou. Phi Gamma Delta, or Fiji as they are also known, is a very substantial national fraternity. The last vice president of the United States was a Fiji. Justice Neil Gorsuch on the U.S. Supreme Court is also a Fiji alum. Here at Mizzou, they were a mainstay for decades. One of their alums from Mizzou actually won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. No other house on this campus can make that boast. There was a man from my hometown who was a proud Fiji alum. He was a very decent man. For years, the Fijis were one of the leading houses. Their alumni dug deep and built a beautiful new house. But their good fortune didn't last. They are gone from Mizzou now, and I doubt they will ever come back. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what went wrong. Danny Santulli was a Fiji pledge a couple of years ago. He was from out of state. He came to Mizzou in large part because a couple of his siblings went here. He was apparently a very enthusiastic member of this pledge class. This is his senior picture. But things went very wrong.
And tonight, we also have a much better understanding on what happened at a Mizzou fraternity house that left one man paralyzed and unresponsive. On Good Morning America this morning, new details, including new surveillance video, shows the incident that hospitalized Danny Santulli. In this story tonight, you're going to see surveillance video from at least 5 different areas in the Phi Gamma Delta, or Fiji, fraternity house. It's going to show the moments when members started a pledge ritual, when pledges consumed alcohol, and then when Santulli was taken to the hospital. Santulli's family and their attorneys spoke with ABC News, sharing what the road has been like since Danny was in the hospital. ABC's Will Weave takes a look into this timeline.
Danny was always a good kid. He was happy.
This morning, a plea from a family desperate to make sure no one else experiences their pain after their son and brother, Danny Santulli, nearly died while pledging a fraternity at the University of Missouri.
I saw Danny in the medical ICU at the hospital at Mizzou, and it's just a bunch of tubes everywhere, and that's an image that will probably never leave my head.
Now, for the first time, the public seeing surveillance footage from inside the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity house on the night of October 19th. Shortly after 9 p.m., pledges can be seen blindfolded and led downstairs for a ritual known as Pledge Dad Reveal Night. According to the family's civil lawsuit that was recently settled against 23 defendants, Danny, an 18-year-old freshman, was pressured to drink an entire bottle of vodka.
They were given their family bottle of alcohol. And then they drank from it, and they took them upstairs, and for the next 2 hours, they drank and drank and drank. We see one of the fraternity members putting a tube in Danny's mouth with a funnel at the other end and pouring beer down his throat while Danny is in the middle of consuming an entire bottle of vodka. That's on the video.
Just before 11 p.m., Danny can be seen losing his balance and falling backwards. Other fraternity members carry him out of the room, pick him up, and drop him onto a sofa. Around 12:30 a.m., Danny, alone on the sofa, begins to slip onto the floor. As the minutes tick by, he struggles to move, then lies still. After 15 minutes, another fraternity member finds him on the floor unresponsive, then lifts Danny back onto the sofa. Other brothers come into the room. One picks Danny up and carries him toward the door, dropping him on the floor. Then outside, fraternity members carry Danny to a car and drive him to the University of Missouri Hospital.
Just the fact that they knew he was in distress and his lips were blue and nobody called 911. It's like, I don't know. I mean, a 6-year-old calls 911.
When Danny arrived at the hospital, he was in cardiac arrest and not breathing. His blood alcohol level, a near-lethal .486. After 6 weeks in the ICU, Danny was moved to a rehab hospital in Colorado. Now, more than 7 months later, he's back home in Minnesota with his family.
What do the doctors tell you about Danny?
That he'll need care for life. He's still not talking or walking. He's in a wheelchair. He lost his vision. But he hears us and he knows we're there. And we'll just keep fighting. And we're not going to give up hope.
We will get through it. We will get through it.
The University of Missouri has since revoked the fraternity's charter and proposed sanctions against 13 of its members. Prosecutors have charged one fraternity member with 2 misdemeanors for supplying alcohol to a minor. But the family says that's not enough.
Your family believes that Danny was hazed?
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It makes me sick to my stomach seeing the people involved that harmed Danny walking around campus acting like they did nothing wrong.
I do personally want to see specific kids get felony Ds. That's going to wake them up. A misdemeanor is not going to wake them up.
Missouri has what I would call a rather typical hazing statute. And the conduct that occurred that night at Pledge Data Reveal night is textbook hazing.
The prosecutor's office saying their investigation is ongoing and, if appropriate, will file additional charges. Danny's mom, Mary Pat, is now his full-time caregiver. His family focusing on celebrating Danny's progress day by day.
At the end of the day, it's still Danny, still looks like Danny, and we're going to love Danny forever, and we'll always be by his side no matter what.
Overnight, the fraternity told ABC News, quote, Danny should not have been put in such a situation, and the fraternity prohibits hazing and giving alcohol to minors. On Monday, the Santulis filed an amendment to their civil suit, adding 2 more fraternity brothers to the case. Will Reeve, ABC News, Boston.
This is how Danny looks now. He is blind, he is unable to talk, and he uses a wheelchair as a result of the damage that was done. His family will care for him for the rest of his life. Multi-million-dollar civil lawsuits were filed, and then a Boone County prosecutor filed criminal charges against a number of Fijis. Your generation knows about alcohol. Most of you have had a drink by now. My generation drank a lot of beer when we were here, sometimes stronger drinks, but most often beer. Your generation, however, often drinks the hard stuff. Hard liquor can be dangerous because it can raise the blood alcohol level to dangerous levels quickly. This is an image from the previous news story. I want to ask, can any of you tell from this image what Danny's blood alcohol level is just from looking at him? 0.1% means you're legally drunk if you're driving a car. 0.4% means you're at risk of death, according to the Cleveland Clinic. As you heard, Danny Santuli's blood alcohol content was close to 0.5%. The next time you see someone passed out after drinking, I urge you, do not assume that person is sleeping it off. If you can't roust him or her, you're going to need to call 911. The guys at the Fiji house wish they had called 911 before it was too late. They also wish they had not forced Danny to drink an entire bottle of vodka. But you can't go back in time. The best you can do is prepare for the future, and that's why we're here today. A number of indictments were handed down as a result of what happened at the Fiji house. Some of the accused have pleaded guilty. This information is all on the internet, and it will be there for a long time. This is the state of Missouri's hazing statute. It defines hazing as the act that recklessly endangers the mental or physical health or safety of a student. And it's a crime. What is meant by the word reckless? Well, lawyers will fight over that all day. I will tell you this, lawyers are expensive. If you're charged with a crime, you or your parents will have to dig deep to find the money to defend you. The statute goes on to read, quote, acts of hazing shall include any activity which recklessly endangers the physical health or safety of the student or prospective member, including but not limited to physical brutality, whipping, beating, branding, exposure to the elements, forced consumption of any food, liquor, underline liquor here, drug or other substance, or forced smoking or chewing of tobacco products, or any activity that recklessly endangers the mental health of the student or prospective member, including but not limited to sleep deprivation, physical confinement, or other extreme stress-inducing activity. Now, what endangers mental health here? A prosecutor can argue that almost any activity is stressful or threatens mental health. The statute concludes, hazing is described as any activity that requires the student or prospective member to perform a duty or task which involves a violation of the criminal laws. I remember a fraternity that was down the street from where I lived as a student. They sent their pledges out during the holiday season to steal Christmas ornaments and bring them back to the house. They got caught and were put on probation for a couple of years. Under today's criminal statutes, that would have been a crime of criminal hazing. The reliable fallback for prosecutors, if they can't prove all the requirements of the statute, is to simply look for anyone who has provided alcohol to a minor. It's very easy for a prosecutor to prove that. They can subpoena your credit cards, your bank records, the liquor store's records, and even the store's videotapes. And if you've texted someone, they will get it. They will get everything on your phone. And if you throw away your phone, it'll be in the cloud. So what do you do if you find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to make you or someone in your presence do something harmful, like chug hard alcohol or do something humiliating? The simple answer is, don't do it. You may think they have power over you or that your initiation into the group will be jeopardized if you say no, but it won't. If someone tries to get you to do anything like this, the reality is that you will own them. One call to the national office of your Greek organization will bring down the heavens on them. Same for the University of Missouri. And if you see this happening to someone else, just speaking up against it is worth a lot. If you say something, others may join in. And if you can't stop it, and you think someone is at real risk, calling 911 in real time may A, save someone from harm or death, and B, insulate you from both civil and criminal liability when all hell breaks loose later. My group has a bill in the legislature that will give the first person to call 911 immunity from prosecution. That bill hasn't passed yet, but many prosecutors will tell you that if you are the person who stands up and tries to stop something from happening, the odds of you being prosecuted or even sued civilly are going to drop substantially. If something bad happens, don't think for a minute that the proverbial code of silence that your house may have is going to hold up. When your 18 to 20-year-old friends are taken one by one to the police station to be interrogated, almost every last one of them is going to spill his or her guts about every detail that happened and who was involved. A lot of houses have internal cameras now too. As you sit here today, a majority of you will be subjected to some form of hazing. The real question is whether it's going to be crossover into something harmful. For a few of you, that will be the case. According to research conducted by Stop Hazing, 55% of college students involved in clubs or athletics experienced some form of hazing. A large percentage involved alcohol consumption. Other activities included sleep deprivation, humiliation, isolation, and sex acts. 95% of these cases went unreported. Why does hazing happen? For the victim, it's partly because of a desire for acceptance. You want to be part of a group. The fiction they tell you is that you have to go through these things to be a member. One of the reasons Greek houses have been popular for so long is that they give people coming to college an immediate group of friends they can work with and live with and whose company they may enjoy. Other reasons may include intimidation, meaning that you may feel that you don't have a choice. Another reason is peer pressure, which is closely related. Another reason is that it can be fun. You're not going to get this much attention in other settings, and you may want to prove yourself. I grew up in a military family, and my late father constantly talked about, quote, earning your stripes. I was willing to do almost anything to prove myself. Again, Hank Newer, a famous writer on this topic, says that, quote, the power in a groupthink mentality leads to individuals acting as they would not act ordinarily because they're in a group. When you're in a group of people, if the rest of the group is doing something, you may end up being part of it, even if you wouldn't have done it outside of the group. This is another study concerning tradition. People in your house will tell you it's tradition, that it's gone back many years. What they won't tell you is that sometimes the tradition morphs from something innocent to something not so innocent. If it's a tradition that is harmful to people, it needs to be discontinued. This is a screenshot from a poster from a series of movies called Jackass. I would have loved it when I was 18 years old. They do a number of risky, crazy things, often involving a risk of injury. This happens with hazing. There was a house on campus with a tradition of making the pledges clean up their house. The actives then started trashing the house to make the task more difficult. In some of the rooms, it got to where there was 3 feet of trash. The actives eventually started taking a freshman hostage and the pledges had to pay a ransom to get him back. That's how these things accelerate. Here are the results of a study involving certain personality types who are the people who commit the worst hazing offenses. I'm showing it to you to support what I'm saying. My fellow alumni know all about this type of person. And to the man and woman, we wish that we had known about them when we were your age. Many of these people probably fall into some diagnosable psychiatric category. All you need to know is that there are certain toxic personalities out there who will foment hazing. There may only be one person in an entire house who is like that, but that's all it takes. It can be an upperclassman, or it can even be a recent alum. But whatever form they take, you have to stand up to them. They will hurt you, and half the time, the other people in the house will stand by and say absolutely nothing. Just one word from you, no, will do wonders. And again, I want to stress, there's nothing they can do to you that will affect your membership in your house. And you may save someone by your actions. These are pictures from various fraternity houses. These guys are in their underwear. They're being forced to drink. This is called a lineup. In some fraternities, it doesn't go much beyond what you'd see in the military. In others, it gets completely out of control. Here we have an active screaming at a pledge. This is the kind of thing I experienced when I was a pledge. I remember an upperclassman getting right in my face, screaming at the top of his lungs. Many years later, I picked up the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and saw that he had been indicted in connection with white-collar crimes. It did not entirely surprise me. Here is a chart that is the result of research about the frequency of various hazing rituals. Remember when I said you probably are telling yourself you would never get involved in these kinds of things? I'm telling you that if you're the frog in the water and it starts out cool and gets hotter, you may very well find yourself participating in this or being the victim of it. Looking at the results, some 26% of college students reported hazing that involved drinking games. 12% reported drinking until passing out. Other types of hazing involve humiliation, getting screamed at, being deprived of sleep, and even sexual acts. Hazing has deadly consequences. There are innumerable instances on the internet about people who have been harmed and parents who have had their hearts broken because their child has been harmed or killed. These are the parents of a student who died at LSU after hazing. They were awarded $6.1 million. I can tell you that that is peanuts now. The typical recovery in these cases now is $10 million or more. These are other parents who lost their children. I could put up 50 pictures up if I wanted to. This young man was Tim Piazza. He was a member of my fraternity at a different chapter at Penn State. Tim was forced to drink huge amounts of alcohol. He eventually fell down a couple of sets of stairs and hurt himself. He was put on a couch. Eventually, after something like 12 hours, he was found to be non-responsive. One of the younger members of the house was going to call 911, and another member threw him up against a wall to prevent it. Eventually, they took Tim to an emergency room. He had so much brain swelling, the surgeons had to remove half of his skull. It didn't work. He died. That chapter was closed down, and at least 15 members of that house were charged with crimes. These are more people who died as a result of hazing, often in Greek houses. Here's the thing. Some 85% of deadly hazing incidents involve alcohol, often hard alcohol. If someone is telling you to chug hard alcohol, they are not your friend. They are not your brother. They are putting your life at risk. And the law considers them to be criminals, and they are criminals. If you find yourself a year from now as an enthusiastic sophomore hoping to give back to the next class, you've got to keep this in mind, because you may not intend to hurt somebody, but if you do, they're going to come down on you. This is a quote from a football player at Northwestern. In a very recent case, it was revealed that the team had some severe hazing involving nudity and unwanted touching. He said, quote, "Unfortunately for us, we were incoming freshmen. We had no reference point. That's kind of what went into normalizing it for us. Well, now you do have a reference point, don't you? So let's review. Greek houses can be a great experience you can benefit from for the rest of your life. You're in an age group that presents risks, and one of those risks, especially if you're in a Greek house or varsity sports team, is hazing. Hazing can leave scars, and in the very worst cases, it kills people or gets them expelled, sued, or sent to jail. Every one of you is precious to your family. Every one of you is already worthy to be a member of the Greek house that has pledged you. If you will just be a good person and lead an honorable life, you will bring honor to your house. Thank you for your time today.